Real Madrid are barreling toward a second straight season completely empty-handed. Álvaro Arbeloa's position as head coach is hanging by the thinnest of threads, and now reports are surfacing that he's drawn a firm line in the sand over 4 players he's convinced have no future at this club. The mounting friction between what Arbeloa desperately needs to rebuild this squad and what Florentino Perez is actually prepared to do about it has sent shockwaves through the entire football world. So let's break down exactly how things spiraled to this point, and why Arbeloa may be on the verge of walking away from the biggest opportunity of his career. On the night of April 15, 2026, in the press room of the Allianz Arena in Munich, Álvaro Arbeloa stepped up to the microphone and said something Real Madrid never wanted to hear publicly. It's an action nobody can comprehend how you can send a player off for something like that in a match of this magnitude. It's crystal clear the tie was decided right there and then. It's something completely inexplicable and deeply unjust. He was referring to Eduardo Kamavinga's second yellow card for time-wasting a call that stripped Real Madrid down to 10 men in the dying moments of a Champions League quarter-final second leg against Bayern Munich. The final score: a 4-3 defeat on the night, 6-4 on aggregate. Real Madrid were eliminated. Jude Bellingham called the decision to dismiss Kamavinga a flat-out joke, while Dani Carvajal pointed the finger squarely at the officials for their exit. Arbeloa told reporters the decision was absurd, though laying blame on referees is hardly unusual in moments like these. Still, there was no escaping the larger reality. Knocked out of the cup competitions and sitting 9 points adrift of Barcelona in La Liga, this was shaping up to be a second consecutive trophyless campaign for the most decorated club on the planet. This was supposed to be the game that salvaged everything. Before the second leg, Bellingham had been emphatic. Any loss in the Champions League feels like a disaster. Given the situation we're in, we understand tomorrow is a final. We want to still be playing for something, not just watching games pass us by. Everything is riding on this. It's all or nothing. Real Madrid blew it. What made the fallout even more explosive was what unfolded in the dressing room. Florentino Perez marched in and delivered a scorching verdict, branding the club's prolonged trophy drought an intolerable failure. The club president made his frustrations known directly to the players and coaching staff. He briefly acknowledged their effort on the night before his tone turned ice cold. "I appreciate your effort today, but this season has been a true disappointment for everyone," Perez reportedly told the stunned group before making his exit. He then issued a blunt ultimatum to his players for the final 6 La Liga matches. Finish the season with at least some dignity, with a blockbuster Clásico against Barcelona at Camp Nou looming on May 10th. That word dignity landed like a gut punch. This is Real Madrid: 15 Champions League titles, 36 La Liga crowns, more than any club in history. They are not accustomed to being told to play for dignity. They play for trophies. And yet here they stood, staring down the barrel of back-to-back barren seasons, something that hadn't happened in 16 years. For Arbeloa, this was the final breaking point. He had been walking a tightrope ever since stepping into the role in January, promoted as Xabi Alonso's successor, largely on the strength of his deep-rooted ties to the club, despite having almost no elite-level coaching experience. His only prior senior work had been managing Real Madrid's reserve side in Spain's third tier for the first half of this very season. Now he sat in Munich, trying to explain how a club with 15 European Cups had just been bundled out in the quarterfinals and why his squad appeared to be unraveling from the inside. But Arbeloa's frustration ran far deeper than one referee and one result. He had been watching this squad up close for 3 months, and he had reached an unavoidable conclusion. This wasn't just a coaching problem, it was a personnel problem. 4 players specifically, he believed, were dragging the entire operation down. The burning question was whether Florentino Perez would actually listen. And if he wouldn't, well, Arbeloa had already proven he wasn't afraid to walk. To truly understand why Arbeloa is reportedly putting his foot down over these players, you have to grasp the catastrophic state of affairs he inherited when he took over in January 2026. Xabi Alonso had been relieved of his duties after presiding over a 3-2 defeat to Barcelona in the Supercopa de España. Rafinha and Robert Lewandowski both struck in the first half for the Blaugrana, but Los Blancos leveled before the break through a quick-fire double from Vinicius Jr. and Gonzalo Garcia. However, Real Madrid couldn't build on that momentum. Rafinha grabbed his second and Barcelona's third in the 73rd minute, and despite a late Frenkie de Jong red card, Hansi Flick's side held on to claim back-to-back Supercopa titles. That defeat in Saudi Arabia ended Alonso's stint at the Bernabeu helm, with an official statement announcing the end of their arrangement by mutual agreement. The reality, though, was far messier than any carefully worded press release could capture. Alonso's final days were a full-blown soap opera clashes with Vinicius Jr., a fan base seething with discontent, lifeless football, and a squad that Alonso himself reportedly described as impossible to coach. Let that sink in for a moment. Impossible to coach. A squad featuring Kylian Mbappé, Vinicius Jr., Jude Bellingham, Federico Valverde, and Trent Alexander-Arnold deemed unmanageable by one of the most intellectually gifted midfielders the sport has ever produced. And so Arbeloa stepped into this firestorm. At his introductory press conference, he spoke with unmistakable passion. "This is a special day for me, just like every day I've spent at Real Madrid. I turned 43 on Saturday, and 20 of those years have been at this club. Being at the greatest club in the world never gets old. I'm fully aware of the responsibility and the magnitude of the challenge ahead, and I'm genuinely thrilled." Then, with conviction, "This club is about winning, winning, and winning again. Those demands are a direct reflection of the DNA that has built this trophy-laden legacy." Noble words. What followed on the pitch, however, was anything but noble. His tenure kicked off with immediate disaster. Arbeloa signaled he would hand opportunities to the young players he had nurtured at La Fábrica, and a Copa del Rey tie against second-tier Albacete seemed like the ideal low-stakes proving ground. He handed out 4 debuts. Madrid lost 3-2 to a 94th-minute goal. A Copa del Rey exit at the hands of a second-division club on his very first night in charge. The fans who had made the trip to the Carlos Belmonte Stadium were absolutely stunned, and it only got worse. A 1-0 home loss to Getafe followed Madrid's second straight La Liga defeat, leaving Arbeloa's side 4 points behind Barcelona at the top of the table. Martín Satriano's thunderous 39th-minute volley settled a contest against a Madrid side that looked rudderless and couldn't string together 2 passes in the final third with any conviction. There was no discernible plan, and there wasn't even a flicker of a comeback. For far from the first time that season, loud boos cascaded down from the stands at the Bernabeu, accompanied by chants calling for Florentino Perez to resign before being smothered by stadium music cranked to full volume. Let that image sink in. The Santiago Bernabeu, a cathedral of football, a monument to over a century of greatness, booing its own players and demanding its president step down. While the sound system was weaponized to drown out the unrest, Vinicius Jr. and Jude Bellingham were targeted with particular ferocity, and the calls for Perez's head grew louder by the minute. Even Arbeloa's first La Liga win, a flat 2-0 victory over Levante, couldn't escape the hostility radiating from the terraces. At the post-match press conference, Arbeloa was pointed and cryptic. "I know exactly where these boos and campaigns are coming from. They're not from people who dislike Florentino, they're from people who don't like Madrid." It was a defiant statement. Some called it loyalty, others called it naivety, but it revealed something critical about Arbeloa. He saw himself as a guardian of the badge, not a hired hand just passing through. Throughout all the chaos, Arbeloa consistently absorbed the criticism and shielded his players from the worst of it. He is, by his own definition, a man of the institution fully committed to fighting for this club at any cost. But being a clubman doesn't mean you have to silently accept everything placed in front of you. Arbeloa could see that the problems went far beyond tactics, formations, or team talks. The rot was inside the squad itself. The longer he watched, the more convinced he became that certain players simply could not be part of any viable solution. The only question was whether Florentino Perez was willing to see what he saw. So, who are these 4 players? Let's go through them. Eduardo Kamavinga. His name sits at the top of every conversation about Real Madrid's dysfunctional midfield. Once celebrated as one of the most electrifying young midfielders in all of Europe, Kamavinga is now enduring arguably the most turbulent campaign of his Madrid career. His performances have dropped noticeably, and the criticism has grown considerably sharper in recent weeks. Internally, the club is increasingly alarmed by his lack of consistency and his repeated inability to deliver when the stakes are highest, and the possibility of moving him on is now a very real one. His reckless moment of indiscipline in Munich, that second yellow card for time wasting that effectively killed off the quarterfinal, was merely the most glaring symptom of a much deeper problem. Deployed as a holding midfielder, he looked completely out of his depth, with his positioning and decision-making coming under heavy scrutiny, particularly in the build-up to Girona's equalizer, where he bore a share of the blame. This has become a recurring pattern all season long. Kamavinga is still only 23 and still has time on his side. But this is already his 5th season in the Spanish capital, and Real Madrid are genuinely concerned he may never figure it out. His ceiling as a midfielder remains tantalizing, but his market value is still considerable, and Madrid may decide the smart move is to cash in now, before that value starts to erode.